Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. I'm excited to tell you that I have finished another amazing One Piece arc, specifically the Baratie Arc, I believe it's pronounced. And to nobody's surprise, I am finding that One Piece is still just going strong. I am enjoying the heck out of it and I am excited to talk to you about it today. So let's jump straight into this review because I've got a lot of stuff I want to talk about and I'm worried that I'm going to forget some things. So without any preamble or rambling, let's get into it. First things first, I want to talk about Nami's betrayal. But I'm going to say Nami's betrayal in air quotes because going off of the theme of this manga and this idea that nothing is really ever as it seems and people are doing bad things but for good reasons, I have a strong feeling that one, Nami's betrayal is going to be forgiven pretty instantly by Luffy because that's just how he is. And two, the betrayal is probably done for an incredibly sympathetic reason. And before I actually started filming this video, I jumped online and I jumped on YouTube to see if anyone else had done any reviews or if anyone would be able to explain any foreshadowing that I missed in regards to Nami's betrayal. But it turns out a lot of people skip this arc when they're reviewing One Piece for some reason, so I couldn't really find anyone that reviewed this specific arc. So going off of my own interpretation, the only real foreshadowing I saw for Nami's betrayal or something going on with Nami was when those two other pirate hunters that used to hang out with Zoro, when those two came onto the boat and Nami came across bounties in their possession, and she had a bounty, and there was something like a pirate's name on it, and he was worth 10 million bells. And to me, that was the real only point, and she did get caught looking at that wanted poster again before she did the betrayal. So to me, that was the only real thing that I'd noticed that would lead up to that, but going off of what I read in the other previous chapters or the other previous arcs, she was trying to save up a lot of money for some personal reason that she didn't tell Luffy about. And if I was to do a guess, if I was to make an educated guess on, now that I've read 68 chapters of One Piece and I've got a good feel for the characters and the tone, if I was to guess what Nami's betrayal was about, I would say that she needs this money for something incredibly sympathetic. I would say that her parents have contracted some kind of mega super duper disease, and the town that she lives in has a doctor. He's a pirate doctor, which would explain why she doesn't like pirates. There's a pirate doctor in her hometown, and he's eaten the heal fruit. And so he's got the ability to heal anybody. But he's not going to heal her parents unless she gives them 10 million bells. She finds out this other pirate is worth 10 million bells, so she's going there. She's going to go and do some kind of trickety trick to try and trick him into turning himself in or something, and she gets the money and she gets to go and heal up her parents or something. That's my prediction, but One Piece is so unpredictable. One Piece is just one of these stories where anything can happen. You think it's going to go one way or you don't know where it's going to go at all, and then the most absurd, random, ridiculous thing will happen and you're just like, yep, I'm on board, I'm along for the ride. They don't know where to go and a shark spits out some guy through the restaurant roof and he gives them a bit of exposition and lets them know where to go next. Sounds good to me. Let's go. I don't know what it is because I usually read a lot more like serious stories. I usually read like a lot of really like in-depth, complicated stories. Like right now I'm reading The Wheel of Time and One Piece at the same time. And usually that's the more kind of like Brandon Sanderson stories as well. That's the more kind of thing I turn to. So it's really surprised me how much I love the ridiculousness and the absurdity of One Piece. And how easy it is for me to get caught up in like this specific kind of storytelling. Like, I'll give you an example. In this one, after Luffy blows a hole in the restaurant's roof and he goes and he talks to Redleg, Zeph, the head chef, while Luffy's talking to him and they're kind of having a little bit of an argument, Sanjay's downstairs and there's like all that drama going on. And all that drama with Sanjay comes to a head, and there's really the only way that story can progress any further is for the head chef to arrive or for Luffy to arrive. And so the way that the author solves this kind of conundrum of like, these guys are up here, these other guys are down here, this story needs Luffy or the head chef to make an appearance in order to keep going, the head chef kicks Luffy through the floor, through the ceiling of the restaurant, and they both just crash into the room. And suddenly they're there and the story can just progress. And it kind of leads into something that I've been saying in my other 2 reviews, is when I kind of talked about Luffy's weaknesses and how I don't understand them, but how I felt as if I don't care that I don't understand Luffy's weaknesses. I don't know what it is specifically about the stakes of this story. I feel like the stakes of this story ride so much on people's emotions and so much on people's characters and how they feel. And it's just something so different and new, because so many stories, the stakes ride on something physical. It rides on your life, or a patch of territory you're trying to hold on to, or, a loved one's life. But in this one, there really are no physical dangers. It's all about people's dreams that mean so much more to them than their life. And that's really just honestly such a powerful way to tell a story. And that kind of leads me on to another point, is I want to talk about the fact that this story really doesn't shy away from darker things. Like, for example, in the first one, Shanks loses his arm. And he loses his arm saving Luffy's life. And Luffy's like, this is it, your life's over, you can't be a pirate anymore, you've only got one arm. And it shows that Luffy doesn't have that mindset yet, but Shanks does, because Shanks is just like, whatever, it's just an arm, I've got a second one. I'm gonna go and follow my dreams and keep going, because nothing is more important to me than that. And that same theme traveled over with the story with Sanji, or Sanji, however you want to pronounce that guy's name, which is also another great kind of showing as to why he would join Luffy's crew and why Luffy would want him on his crew. Because, like I said in the Usopp recruiting video, there was that common mindset, there was that common goal, there was that common feeling that they both shared towards goals and doing the right thing, and above all else fighting for what you love. And Luffy also had that same kind of shared background with Sanji, in that he also was saved by an incredible pirate, and in the process, that pirate was heavily injured. And let's talk about that moment just a bit more, because that was such a wow moment when the head chef Zess and Sanji get washed up on that rock, and Zeph is just here's 5 days worth of food, be smart about it, make it last longer. And Sanji's like, why do you have 3 times as much food as me? And Zeph is like, I'm an adult, it just makes sense that I have more food because I will eat more than you. And they kind of go their separate ways, and you see Sanji drinking water and kind of rationing his food. And then you see Zeph taking a rock and just smashing his leg and just destroying his leg. And then it cuts away and doesn't really explain why. So in that moment, you're just wait, was his leg injured? Did he have gangrene or something in his leg? Why did he just take a rock and just start smashing his leg with it? That's insane. And it wasn't until a little bit later on that you find out that the whole time, Zeph had given Sanjay all of the food. And it wasn't until Sanjay came across to rob Zeph of his food that you find out that he had nothing the whole time. And so he cut off his own leg to eat it to survive. When that reveal happened, I was just like, what? And I was just so shocked and blown away and just impressed at the storytelling that I tried to explain it to someone else. I was like, you're not going to believe what I just read. This guy who had a kid with him just chopped off his own leg because he gave all the food to the kid and then ate his own leg so he didn't take any of the food from the kid. And it was in that moment that I really realized why the One Piece fandom is so tight-knit and why there's so many people in it and why it's so welcoming, because it was in that moment when my friend looked at me and was just didn't really understand what I was saying, that I was like, I wish that I had someone that I could talk to about this, because there's no way that I can give the context and the feeling and all that to make my friend understand why this is such a huge deal. And it really made me understand this fandom a lot more. And that's just from the 3rd arc. I can't imagine what'll happen when I get up to chapter 1000. I've just got all of these things that I just want to talk to people about, but won't be able to. But luckily, I've got this. I've got, people talk to me through this YouTube channel, through these One Piece videos. So I would like to just take this moment to say thank you for sharing this journey with me. Thank you for allowing me to talk to you guys about this kind of thing. I do honestly really appreciate it. The next thing I want to talk about is how incredibly layered this story is. This story is basically a tiramisu. There's so much just like wafer, just like foreshadowing little bits that is just packed on top of each other that really has an excellent payoff once you get to the end of the story. And I did notice that about the first 2 arcs that I read as well, but I felt as if it was a lot more prevalent in this one. And specifically, I'll just talk about Sanji in this specific discussion. The first thing that we see of Sanji is that he gets really mad that the lieutenant, Iron Fist, or whatever that guy's name was, just kind of rocks up, causes problems, and then just disappears for the rest of the story. But Sanji gets really mad because that guy was wasting food, right? He got angry and he smashed the table and the food went everywhere. And that was the thing that Sanji was mad about. He wasn't mad that, plates smashed or that the table smashed or that this guy was yelling at him. He was mad that he wasted food. And then Sanji, beats the crap out of him. And in that moment, you're like, okay, yeah, I can kind of see what's going on here. I mean, if you've ever worked in retail or the service industry, we've all had them thoughts before. So I get it. But it kind of just showed Sanji as, not a great person. He's short-tempered and he just beat the crap out of this guy because he wasted food. But it's okay, maybe he's a passionate chef. That's what the crew's looking for. So I can kind of see how this is going to work out. And then a little later on, you get a bit more layering with the flashback with Sanji as a boy. And they're in the kitchen and the chefs are eating the leftovers. The chefs are eating the scraps. And Sanji's like, throw away the scraps, don't eat them, that's gross. And the chefs are like, look, it's fine, they barely touched it, we're going to eat it. And he also remarks that he threw away some food that was starting to get a little old because they were going to be in a port in the next 2 days. And so with Sanji, you've already got these 2 layers. You've got him being mad about wasted food, and then you've got this memory of him being a young boy and kind of being disgusted that people were eating leftovers and he was kind of throwing away food that didn't need to be thrown away yet. And then that's when Jin comes in. And if you don't remember, Jin was the prisoner that was of Iron Fist, or whatever that guy's name was. Don Krieg's first mate, I believe, is what he was. And he comes in and he's desperately starving, needs food. And everyone's just no, you've got no money, you're this pirate. If we feed you, you're just going to cause us problems. So they kick him out of the restaurant. But then Sanji goes out there and feeds him. And you're okay, cool, I can kind of see what's happening. It shows Sanji as a good guy. He's kind of like a Robin Hood character. He'll feed the poor, and if the rich are being mean to him and wasting his food, he'll beat them up. Kind of like a Robin Hood, but of chefs. And in that moment, actually something really great happens. You see Luffy watching Sanji, and there's kind of a double entendre in what he says. Because the Jin guy is wow, this is the best food I've ever eaten. And he's super grateful and eats it. And Luffy's watching it happen. And he says something along the lines of, I finally found myself a good cook. And it's such a great double entendre moment because it's he's good of character to be feeding this guy who potentially poses a threat to him, but also can't pay for his food. But also the guy was saying how great of a cook or how great the food was tasting. And in that moment, there was really no doubt in my mind that Sanji was going to join the crew. And then you get another layer on top of that when, Jin runs off and he brings Don Krieg back and they, cause all that drama. And Don Krieg's we're going to take over this ship. Everyone get out, go. But before you go, give me enough food to feed 100 people. And all the chefs are no. They're all, preparing for a fight because they're hey, we'll just fight this one guy instead of fighting this one guy plus 100 of his crew. But Sanji starts heading to the kitchen to cook the food for these 100 people, right? And I, as the reader, I was am I about to not like Sanji? Is there some kind of thing going on here? I understand doing the right thing, but this is a little, what are you doing here, Sanji? And then all the chefs pull guns on him. And I was that was such a great moment there. And Sanjay's like, look, shoot me if you want to stop me or kill me or whatever, but I'm going to cook this food for these people. I'm not going to let them starve to death. And at the time, you don't really understand it because you haven't got all that kind of like context yet. But it is such a great payoff later on when you find out that the reason he won't let people starve is because he was there. He was that wasteful kid that would throw food away, and then he spent like 85 days on a rock without food. And this guy that saved his life had to eat his own leg and give up his career as a pirate, all because of food shortages. So like, it was so powerful when you do get that payoff. And further to that, you also get a bit more understanding of why Zeph gives Don Krieg the 100 people's worth of food. And at the time, Zeph is like, look, these people have just been like decimated by the Grand Line. These people aren't going to get up, eat, and then just come and fight us straight away. And it makes a lot of sense, alright? It makes a lot more sense than whatever the hell Sanjay was doing. But later on, you get that context that like he ate his own leg because he didn't have enough food, so you understand why he is also in that same mindset that Sanjay is in. But obviously Zeph being a bit older, because apparently Sanjay's like 18 or 19 or something, but with Zeph being a bit older, he knows how to like kind of manipulate what he's saying to fulfill his needs or desires, to fulfill his like need to feed people that are starving, but still save face in front of his crew. And I could go on talking about other layerings that happen in this specific arc, but I don't want to be sitting here rambling about how much of a brilliant author this guy is for 30 minutes. I gotta like talk about other stuff. Specifically, let's talk about Zoro. And I have a real legitimate question. Is his name Zoro or is it Zolo? Because I've seen two different spellings. I've seen Z-O-R-O and I've seen Z-O-L-O. And I'm pretty sure that it is Zoro because his name's like Roronoa Zoro. Anyway, guys, if you could clear that up for me, that'd be really great because I would hate to be saying this guy's name wrong for the next like 1,000 reviews. I actually really sincerely liked Zoro's story in this specific arc because it really did a lot to set up Zoro's growth. Right, we all knew that Zoro was trying to be the best swordsman, and let's just, on a little side note, let's just mention, I didn't mention this in my other review, Zoro's backstory is like really sad. Like with the whole, there's the girl and they were training together and they were like best buddies and they were like, you know, one of us is going to become the world's best swordsman. And then like in the very next day, she trips walking down the stairs and just dies. Like, that's pretty intense, right? Like, they're just best friends, they make this, like, life-changing pact and bond, and then she just, like, trips down the staircase and dies. I remember when I first heard his, like, backstory, I was kind of hoping that she would already be on the Grand Line because she was older than he was. So I was kind of expecting her to already be on the Grand Line and kind of made her way to becoming the greatest swordsman, or even just the second greatest swordsman, right? And kind of like the whole time Zoro is going there and he's thinking that he's going to have to fight the like hawk-eyed man to become the world's greatest swordsman. But when he finally like gets there, it turns out she's there and she's already defeated him. Or perhaps they both rock up to the hawk-eyed man's place at the exact same time and they have to duel to see who gets to like fight him at the end. When I first heard his backstory, I thought that's how it would go down. Of course, at then we didn't know the hawk-eyed man, but, you know, as to my understanding, he is the world's best swordsman, so I will use those two interchangeably. Anyway, so I like that from the beginning of the story when the two other pirate hunters rock up, and they first mention the hawk-eyed man, right? They mention the restaurant on the ocean, and they say to Zoro, that hawk-eyed man that you've been looking for, he's there. And Zoro, like, you just see his face, he just, like, panics. It's just, like, sheer panic on his face. And it's the first time you really get to see that from Zoro. Because usually he's, like, just so cool and calm and collected. So to see him, like, fearful to face another person was, like, good. It was like, a good character moment for him. And then a little later on, the same thing happens a second time before finally he does confront the hawk-eyed man. And I remember when they came face to face, I was really hoping that there would be a lot of just like mutual respect for each other. I was hoping that there would just be like this mutual respect between sword masters. But at the start, the hawk-eyed man was just like, who are you? You're nobody. Why are you even talking to me? Like, get away from me, you peasant. But Zoro's like, no, I'm going to be the world's greatest swordsman, and that means I need to face you, so let's go. And they, have that fight, and all that stuff happens, and the guy, like, stabs Zoro in the chest just above his heart, and Zoro just, like, stands there. And the hawk-eyed man is like, you should step back, because if you step forward, the blade will go into your heart, so you should step back, otherwise you will die. And Zoro's like, I can't step back, because I will lose a piece of myself. I will lose something that I'm fighting for. And that ties into what I was saying at the beginning, how, like, the stakes of this story just are not physical. The stakes of this story are so much more than just life or death. And I loved it. Anyway, so the thing that I really liked about that whole moment was I liked that the hawk-eyed man found a lot of respect for Zoro and was like, come find me in the Grand Line once you've improved yourself. And as the reader, that is great to see, because it shows that Zoro is going to have to become so much stronger than he already is. It sets us up as the reader to know that there is going to be just such an amazing amount of character growth happening, because we've seen the big boss that Zoro has to fight in order to become the world's greatest swordsman, and we've seen how much better he is. And I did really like that, because up until this point, we haven't really had a lot of kind of threads that do project what the story is going to be like in, 100 chapters or 200 chapters. That, or at least to me, like, obviously not knowing what I'm specifically looking for, to me, there haven't really been a lot of those, like, long-lasting threads thrown out. But with Zoro, this feels like that first long-lasting thread that's been thrown out. It's like, this is the massive piece of foreshadowing at the beginning before, 1,000 chapters down the road, we find out that he does become the Swordmaster. Started from the bottom, now we're here. That kind of moment. And just talking about those long-lasting threads, there is one more thing I want to mention along those lines, is I liked that we got to see Don Krieg's ship. I liked that we got to see it all, like, messed up and destroyed from being in the Grand Line. Because up until this point, we hadn't really had a lot of experience with the Grand Line, right? Like, people talk about it, people say, oh yeah, the Grand Line, it's a pretty crazy place. It's pretty bad out there, you should be careful. But this is the first moment that we really get to see something dangerous from the Grand Line, because this guy lost his, like, 50-ship pirate crew, all of them dead, and his ship barely made it out, and all of his crew is starving and probably going to die. So I did like that first look at how really dangerous the Grand Line is. And going back to Sanji and Zeph, I just wanted to talk about how cleverly their characters were written, or more specifically, like, how clever their specific fighting style is, right? Luffy, he ate the gum gun fruit and now he can stretch, and he does, like, things that involve him stretching, right? There isn't really too much, like, finesse or, like, too much thought gone into that. Zoro, he's a samurai who puts a sword in his mouth, right? Nami, when she fights, she has, like, a stick that she hits people with. And Usopp has a slingshot. And I feel like none of it really took a lot of thought to give these characters their specific fighting style, right? Like, I feel like Zoro was just like, yep, we need a samurai, he's got this specific fighting style, and then we'll build the character around that. Whereas I feel like for Sanji and Zeph, I feel like the fighting style was built around the character instead of the character being built around the fighting style. And I hope that makes sense, right? And I'll do my best to explain what I'm talking about, but here are two characters that pride themselves on their ability to cook. They're two chefs. And their fighting style is all about, like, kicking things, kicking people. And there's a moment in the manga where the guy's like, you just kick people? That seems kind of lazy, doesn't it? And Sanjay's like, a chef's hands are his, like, livelihood. They are his tools. So I'm not going to risk damaging my hands by punching you. I don't need my feet to cook. so I'm just gonna like kick things. And to me, I was really impressed by that because it was the first instance that I felt that like the fighting style had been built around the character himself as opposed to the character being built around the fighting style. Alright, enough talking about that. I just want to touch on one more Sanji point and then we'll move on. I really liked the end of this manga when like they pretend to like not like his food to keep his ego in check and to try and get rid of him. So he will go and follow his dreams to find the all blue. And I love like right at the end how like emotional everyone gets when he's like walking off and everyone's just kind of like looking at him. And then Zeph is like, don't catch a cold. And Sanji just like drops to his knees and is just like, I can never repay you for what you've done to me. I'll never forget this debt. And then everyone starts crying and they're all like, we're going to miss you. I was just like, it was really wholesome and emotional. And I actually really liked that goodbye and I really enjoyed that ending. And one last thing that I want to talk about before I end this video, because it's already longer than I was expecting it to be, is I really love the exposition in this world. Exposition is such a just ridiculously difficult thing for authors to pull off well. A lot of readers hate it. A lot of authors can't figure out a way around it. And if you're not quite sure what I mean by exposition, it's basically anytime you're watching a movie or reading a book or whatever, and the people say, I'm going to go and do this for this reason. Or there's just like a big heap of world history information dumped on you. And like I said, most people hate it, and most authors can't really figure out their way around it. But in One Piece, the exposition is just done so ridiculously that it is enjoyable. You kind of look forward to it. And the two great examples of exposition that are done in this story is right at the beginning when they shoot the cannon at the rock and they like blow up the rock. And so those two pirate hunters jump onto the ship and they're like, hey, we were sleeping on that rock and now we're going to fight you. But then they see Zoro and they're like, oh, hey, what, you're looking for a chef? Yeah, there's a place. We know a place where you can find a chef. And they tell them about the restaurant. They tell them how to get there and what to expect when they get there, right? Like, that's the first bit of exposition that happens here. And the second bit is right at the end where a panda shark has one of those guys in its mouth, jumps out of the ocean, crashes through the restaurant ceiling, and then just, like, spits the guy out, jumps back into the ocean, and the guy's like, oh, you're looking for Nami? Yeah, she went that way, let's go. And it just kind of feels like the author is like, nobody likes exposition, nobody likes to write it, nobody likes to read it, so I'm just going to make it as like cut and dry and just like ridiculously absurd as I possibly can. And it just works really, really well. And yeah, so basically that's my review for the Baratie Arc or the Baratie Arc. I already forgot what it's called. I am going to be jumping pretty much straight into the next arc because I really want to find out what happens with Nami. Although I do have to get my Wheel of Time books back to the library, so we'll see which video comes out first. So yeah, basically, that's it. Thanks for watching, guys. Please leave me a comment. I love all your One Piece comments that you guys are leaving me. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And as always, thank you very much.